The hospital's fluorescent lights hummed above me, their white glare spilling across the sterile floor. My hands were trembling, even though I kept telling myself to stay calm, for Liam's sake. He was only 6. 6 with a small chest and a heart that fluttered too fast, too hard, like a bird trapped behind his ribs. The nurse checked his fore and smiled softly. "You're doing great, sweetheart. We'll be ready in a few minutes." Liam smiled weakly, clutching his stuffed fox, the one his grandmother gave him 2 years ago. "Mommy," he whispered. "Is Grandma coming?" My throat closed up. "She said she'd try, baby. She might just be running late." But she wasn't. No one was. The waiting room was empty except for a couple whispering across from me, and the faint squeak of rubber soles on tile. I'd texted, called, begged. My mom hadn't answered. My sister read the message and left it on scene. Even my husband, Mark, hadn't shown. He told me last night he couldn't miss his client breakfast. A client breakfast. On the morning our son was going in for heart surgery, the nurse appeared again, clipboard in hand. "We're ready for Liam." My pulse thundered. "Can I go with him?" "Up to the prep room, yes. Not inside the OR." I followed them down the hall, clutching his tiny hand until the last possible second, whispering promises that everything would be okay. My voice shook on every word. When they wheeled him away, something inside me cracked. A sharp, clean break that no one could hear. I sat in the waiting room for hours. The coffee machine wheezed and sputtered. My phone stayed silent. I kept refreshing my messages, hoping for just one notification. Nothing. Not from Mom. Not from Mark. Not from anyone. By noon I realized no one was coming. I was alone in the coldest place on earth, with the sound of heart monitors echoing somewhere behind those double doors and a silence in my chest that felt permanent. The surgeon finally came out around 2:17 p.m. His mask was pulled down, leaving a tired smile on his face. "He did great. The arrhythmia was corrected and he's stable. You can see him in about 30 minutes. I nodded, tears slipping free before I could stop them. Relief and exhaustion tangled together. But beneath them both was a quiet, jagged pain. When I walked into Liam's recovery room, I felt the world tilt again. He looked so small under all those wires, but his chest rose steadily now. "Mommy." His voice was groggy. "Did Daddy come?" I swallowed. "Not yet, sweetie. But he knows you're okay. That's what matters, right?" He smiled weakly. "Can Grandma visit soon?" "She promised she would when I got better." I couldn't answer that. I just brushed the hair from his forehead and kissed his cheek. 3 days later we were back home. Liam was resting, coloring on the couch with crayons scattered everywhere. The house was quiet except for the steady tick of the wall clock. Mark was upstairs on a work call, door shut. I hadn't seen him properly since the surgery. He'd come home late that night, smelling faintly of cologne and whiskey. He'd muttered something about traffic and bad timing. I didn't have the energy to fight. Not then. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Mom read heart. For a moment my heart lifted. Maybe she was checking on Liam. Maybe she finally realized. "Need $12,000 for your sister's business loan. Urgent. Can you wire it tonight?" That was it. No, how's Liam? No, how did the surgery go? Just 12 words about money. Something inside me went cold. I typed back, "Liam just came home from surgery. You didn't show up." She read it instantly. No reply. I stared at the screen for a full minute before setting the phone down. The refrigerator hummed softly behind me. Outside, wind rattled the trees. Mark came downstairs, loosening his tie. "You look pale. You okay?" I looked at him, really looked. The way he avoided my eyes, the faint irritation at my silence, the way his shirt collar was rumpled, but his hair was perfect. "I'm fine," I said quietly. "Just tired." "Good. Because my mom invited us to dinner Saturday. She wants to meet her grandson now that things have calmed down." Her grandson. He hadn't even told his mother Liam was in the hospital. "Sure," I murmured. Saturday. That night, after putting Liam to bed, I scrolled through my old messages with Mom. There were months of money requests, casual guilt trips, emotional blackmail disguised as concern. I'd brushed them off for years, that's just how she is. But something about this one, coming after everything, hit differently. I opened Facebook almost absent-mindedly and froze. Mom had posted a photo 3 days ago, the same day as Liam's surgery. She was at a beach resort, tropical drink in hand. Caption: finally taking some time for myself. Family can wait, red heart. The comments below were full of her friends cheering her on. My hands went numb. I clicked on her tagged photos. There she was, smiling next to my sister, Rachel. Matching sunglasses. Matching lies. I don't remember the moment I started crying, only that I was suddenly shaking so hard I had to grip the counter to stay upright. Mark's voice came from the hallway. What's wrong? I quickly closed the screen. Nothing. He frowned. You sure? Just tired, I repeated. He hesitated, then shrugged and went back upstairs. When I finally looked at my phone again, a new text blinked on the screen from Rachel. Mom said you're being dramatic again. Can we not make everything about you? My fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling. Then I deleted the message. Over the next few days, the quiet grew heavy. Mark came and went like a ghost, half present, always distracted. His phone was glued to his hand, and I caught snippets of texts when he thought I wasn't looking. Can't talk now. She's home. Later. It was nothing explicit, but it was enough to stir something in me. A flicker of dread I kept trying to smother. One night while he showered, I picked up his phone. It was locked. I almost put it down, but then I remembered the surgery. The empty waiting room. My mother's text. I knew deep down that something was connected. I guessed the passcode. Our anniversary. It opened. The first message that popped up was from a contact saved as T. Still thinking about you. Last night was perfect. My stomach dropped. I scrolled up. Weeks of messages. Photos. Voice notes. Some from nights he'd claimed to be working late. And then one photo froze me completely. It wasn't just anyone. It was Rachel. My sister. My breath caught, sharp and painful. I sat there staring at the screen, unable to process the image. Rachel's face. Her laugh caught mid-motion. His hand on her shoulder. I scrolled further, numb. The timestamps lined up perfectly, with the nights I'd been sitting beside Liam's hospital bed, alone. She doesn't even notice when you're gone, Rachel had written. She's too busy playing the victim. I dropped the phone. It clattered against the floor, screen still glowing. For a long moment, all I could hear was the sound of the shower running upstairs. The faint murmur of Liam's cartoons from his room. The world felt suddenly terrifyingly unreal. Then a thought cut through the fog, sharp, bitter, cold. My mother hadn't shown up. My sister had ignored me. My husband had been busy. They were all together. All of them. I walked upstairs slowly, my heartbeat loud in my ears. The sound of water stopped just as I reached the door. Mark stepped out, towel around his waist, phone still in hand. Hey, he said casually. What's wrong? I looked at him, forcing my voice to stay even. Who's T? His face didn't move. For a fraction of a second, so brief I might have missed it, something flickered in his eyes. Then he smiled. Just a client. Really? I whispered. Because I saw the messages. The silence stretched. The towel slipped slightly as he froze. Lena. It's Rachel, isn't it? He didn't deny it. And in that moment something inside me went colder than before. Colder than grief, colder than rage. It was the death of illusion. The slow collapse of every lie I'd clung to just to survive. Lena, he said quietly. It's not what you think. Then what is it? My voice cracked. Because while our son was fighting for his life, you were. Stop, he snapped, voice low. You don't understand. Your family, your mother, they made things impossible. Rachel was there when you weren't. When I wasn't. I almost laughed. I was in a hospital holding our son's hand. He rubbed his forehead, exasperated. You're twisting this. I made a mistake, okay? It's done. Done. My voice trembled. How long? He looked away. A few months. My knees gave out. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the room spinning. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to break every fragile thing in the world, but all I could do was whisper. Why her? He didn't answer. When I finally left the room, the only sound was the faint hum of the heater. I stood in the hallway, staring at Liam's closed door, at the drawings taped to the wall, at the life I'd built brick by fragile brick. now cracked straight through the center. My phone buzzed again. It was Mom, still waiting on that $12,000. I stared at the screen for a long time before typing 3 words. You'll get it. But what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the money wasn't the only thing I planned to send. Because if they thought I'd stay quiet, broken, small, they hadn't learned a damn thing about me. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, my hands wrapped around a mug of cold tea. The clock ticking past 3 a.m. My mind replayed everything: Liam's fragile heartbeat, the empty waiting room, Mom's text, Rachel's laugh, Mark's blank face. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. How could they? But then, as the numbness began to shift into something sharper, another question surfaced. Why did I keep letting them? The next morning, I dressed Liam for school as if everything was normal. He wore his favorite red hoodie, the one with the small stitched fox. He looked up at me, his big brown eyes bright. "Mommy," he said, "can Daddy pick me up today?" I froze, forcing a smile. "Not today, sweetheart. Daddy's busy. But we'll get ice cream later, okay?" His grin returned, pure and trusting. He didn't need to know. Not yet. When I dropped him off, I sat in the car for a long time, staring at the steering wheel. Then I turned the key and drove. Not home, not to work, but to my mother's house. Mom's house smelled like her usual mix of perfume and old candles. She opened the door in her silk robe, holding a cup of coffee, sunglasses perched in her hair. "Lena," she said, smiling like nothing had happened, "you look awful. Rough night." "I guess you could say that." She stepped aside. "Come in. I'm glad you're here. About the money." I walked past her. "You were at a resort." Her smile faltered. "Excuse me. The day of Liam's surgery. You and Rachel." I saw the photos. She laughed, a short, cold sound. "Oh, for God's sake. We needed a break. You're always so dramatic, Lena. You make everything about you." My nails dug into my palms. "My son was in surgery." Her tone hardened. "You think you're the only one with problems? Rachel's been going through a lot. You know how hard her life's been since she started sleeping with my husband?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. They hit the air like glass shattering. For a second, the world went silent. Mom's eyes widened, then narrowed. "You found out. You found out. That's it? You knew." She looked at me, her expression unreadable. "I told her to keep it quiet. You were already unstable after Liam's diagnosis." I stared at her, unable to breathe. "You knew, and you didn't stop it?" She shrugged slightly, setting down her coffee. "Mark's good for her, Lena. He takes care of her. You've always been difficult." My throat burned. "He's my husband." "Was," she corrected softly. I felt something in me snap. Not a scream, not a sob, but a still, dangerous quiet. The kind that comes right before a storm. I left without another word. By the time I got home, the decision had already settled in my bones like steel. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to take back what they'd stolen, my peace, my dignity, and everything they thought I'd never have the strength to reclaim. That afternoon I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, the same one who'd handled my late father's estate years ago. The one Mom always complained about because he sides with you too much. I told him everything. The affair. The manipulation. The financial entanglements. Then I told him I wanted out. From the marriage, from the shared business accounts, from the house that held too many ghosts. He hesitated. "Lena, are you sure? This could get messy." "I want it messy," I said quietly. "I want them to choke on it." 2 days later I began moving pieces. Mark's name came off Liam's medical proxy. I froze the joint credit cards. And that $12,000 Mom had asked for? I wired it to her old account. But before sending it, I made one small change. The transfer came from Rachel's name. A quiet seed of chaos, buried where they'd least expect it. By the time they realized it wasn't real, the questions would have already started. Questions that turn on families like rusted knives. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. Mark stormed into the house one evening, face flushed. "What the hell did you do?" I looked up from the kitchen table. "Good evening to you too. You froze the accounts. My cards are declined. I had a business dinner tonight." "With who?" "My sister." His jaw tightened. You're being vindictive. I'm being alive, I said. You can't have both your lies and my silence anymore. He took a step forward. You think you're punishing me, but you're hurting Liam. You're tearing this family apart. I laughed softly. This family fell apart the moment you decided my sister was worth more than your son's heartbeat. For a second I saw guilt flicker in his eyes, and then anger replaced it. You'll regret this, he hissed before slamming the door on his way out. The next morning Mom called. Lena, what have you done? Rachel's losing it. Mark's blaming her for some money transfer. I told you you'd get the $12,000, I said evenly. Guess I wasn't lying. Her voice turned sharp. You've gone too far. You need help. No, I said, my tone calm, clear, certain. I finally stopped helping everyone else. Then I hung up. For a few weeks silence returned. Not peace silence. The kind that fills every corner of the house like smoke. Mark moved out. Rachel stopped posting. Mom pretended to be a victim to anyone who'd listen. And I rebuilt. I started working from home again, spending mornings painting with Liam, walking him to therapy, watching color return to his cheeks. The light that had dimmed in me began to flicker back. But healing isn't linear. Some nights I still stared at the ceiling and wondered when love had turned into pity, when family had become strangers. Sometimes I almost texted Mom, almost forgave Mark, almost missed Rachel, almost. But then I remembered that hospital hallway, that empty chair beside me, and I'd let the thought die. A month later a letter arrived, thick, formal, stamped with legal insignia. It was from my lawyer. Inside was a copy of the finalized divorce papers and something else. A notarized record of the property transfer. Mark's business investments were funded through my father's inheritance, something he tried to hide by using Rachel's name on the filings. When my lawyer uncovered it, I'd gained legal ownership of most of his assets. Poetic symmetry. The woman they called dramatic had just rewritten the ending. I didn't tell anyone. Not at first. I waited until the court's decision came through, until every document was official and irreversible. Then one evening I sent a group text to Mark, Mom, and Rachel. You taught me how to survive without you. Thank you for the lesson. Attached was a photo of Liam, smiling, healthy, holding his new art project. A cardboard heart covered in glitter. Underneath I wrote, he's stronger than all of us. Maybe that's the point. None of them replied. But that night I really slept for the first time in months. Weeks passed. The world grew softer. Liam laughed again. I painted again. I stopped waiting for apologies that would never come. Then, one quiet Sunday morning as I poured Liam's cereal, he looked up at me and said, Mommy, when people leave, does it mean they don't love you? I knelt beside him, my throat tight. No, baby, I whispered. Sometimes it means they never really knew how. He nodded, satisfied, and went back to his coloring. And I realized maybe that's what forgiveness really is. Not giving them another chance, but freeing yourself from the story they tried to write for you. Epilogue. Months later, on the anniversary of Liam's surgery, we visited the hospital to drop off toys for the children's ward. As I watched him hand his stuffed fox to another little boy, my chest filled with something I hadn't felt in a long time, peace. Outside, the sun glowed through the hospital windows, warm and soft, and for once it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a beginning. Because some stories don't need revenge to end powerfully. Sometimes survival is the revenge. And mine? It was living loudly, freely, and without them.